Sonic the Hedgehog is one of my favorite video game characters of all time, and Sonic Heroes was also one of the first video games that I ever got for myself. Growing up, I discovered Sonic X during the Fox Box block that used to air every Saturday morning when my brothers would get up and watch the different shows. Thanks to Sonic X, I wanted to get Sonic Heroes for our PlayStation 2. My brothers already had some games for it, such as Kingdom Hearts, Jak and Daxter, a few sports titles, and I'm sure a few other games that I don't remember, but I never personally got any games for it for myself until Sonic Heroes and Sonic X made me change my mind. Sonic was the platforming mascot that made me want to rush into my local GameStop like I was racing against Sam Speed to get the game. I remember when booting up the game how I was introduced to the different teams that Sonic Heroes had to offer. There was Team Rose, Team Sonic, Team Dark, and finally Team Chaotix. I'm sure it's no surprise that anyone watching this video, I picked Team Rose out of the other teams first. When I first heard Amy speak, I couldn't help but notice that she sounded a little different from when I would watch Sonic X. I thought it was a little odd, but didn't think about it too much. Something that I would find out later on was that Sonic Heroes and Sonic X had an entirely different voice cast when compared to each other. I should probably mention right here at this point that there are going to be spoilers ahead, so if you are somebody that hasn't played this game and doesn't want to get any spoilers, you probably don't want to continue watching. Anyways, I was off with Amy, Cream, and Big to help find Froggy, Chocola, and Sonic after going through the tutorial stage. First, I was blown away from the creativity of the different stages that I went through, everything from Seaside Hill to Final Fortress. There was quite a bit of variety when it came to the different stages that I went through. A few of my favorites were Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace, Grand Metropolis, Frog Forest, and Mystic Castle. As someone who already enjoyed platformers in the past when I played some of the games, I was certainly enjoying myself, but this time it was different. This was my own first game that I'd got for myself and wasn't playing one of my brother's games. This game was mine, and I was going to enjoy it. After the happy reunion of Froggy, Chocola, and Sonic, I've heard the Chaos data being copied, and it really stuck out to me, but there was this big mystery ahead that was just waiting to be discovered. Next up was Team Sonic. This time, it was all about stopping Dr. Eggman with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. The usual stuff that you'd expect out of a Sonic game. Going straight into the action without a tutorial level, I couldn't help but notice that I was going through all the same stages as Team Rose. I mean, each and every single stage was the same, but only this time, there were a few changes and the difficulty spiked up. There wasn't a drastic change, but I could tell. I do remember that many years after playing this, I'd see some people online complain, but Sonic Heroes is essentially playing all the same stages 4 times, and I can see why people would critique about that and Sonic Heroes. However, for me, it wouldn't bother me too much. After all, there were slight variations from each of the 4 teams, so it kept things fresh for me. I will admit that as a kid, I did not reach the ending of the game. The special stages were just too hard for my younger self back then, although I was successful in beating the stories for all 4 teams. Many years later, thanks to the many kind people with their uploaded playthroughs, I was finally able to see the giant fight against Metal Sonic and how all the teams went into fight. It was so cool to see Sonic use the 7 Chaos Emeralds to take on the giant metal behemoth. I've seen plenty of times on Sonic X when Sonic would use the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds when something major was going down. Plus, that Crush 40 theme for the big fight was just so awesome. With me being older now and seeing that ending, I really want to go back and play the game that was my first introduction of the Sonic series and have a proper playthrough and finally reach the ending after all these years. Now, I do realize that the game isn't perfect, and I would argue that some of the highest rated and most beloved games of all time are also not perfect either. After all, I feel like any game that can be played has at least one flaw, no matter how big or how small it is. With Sonic Heroes, some of the most common complaints that are seen online are the stages being played over multiple times by all 4 teams, the slippery movement, the combat, lack of tutorials against certain enemies, and I'll admit that those critiques are valid in my opinion. However, I personally don't consider them to be flaws that are so bad that it ruins a game for me. Of course, as I got introduced to more Sonic games as I got older, I would find other Sonic games that had more to offer in terms of their overall games. However, I do hold Sonic Heroes in a special place in my heart because it was the first Sonic game that I ever owned and played. Plus, there are plenty of other things in Sonic Heroes that offered a great experience for me. While I did mention that one of the things that stuck out to me were the themes of the different stages, but I also can't forget the awesome soundtrack, especially the opening. This was my introduction to Crush 40, and as I would get more familiar with Sonic as the years would go by, I can truthfully say that they are still one of my favorite bands to this day. I also like the different themes for the teams as well. It's really hard for me to choose which theme of the different teams is my favorite. They're way too good for me. More music that I also enjoyed from Sonic Heroes was the music from Seaside Hill, the special stage music Casino Park, the music that plays when you're selecting the different teams. I don't know what it is about the Sonic games, but they don't miss when it comes to great music, and I'm glad to see a lot of people also agree with me online when it comes to music from the Sonic games as a whole. Sonic Heroes is certainly a game that fans will defend, while other fans will point out that it isn't one of the best titles out from the Sonic franchise. I've already mentioned the flaws that are talked about the most. However, I feel like there are worse Sonic games out there like this, or like this. But overall, I do feel like Sonic Heroes has left a positive impact on the franchise. I haven't played Brawl, but I have seen some of the trophies in it and do see that Sonic Heroes is mentioned. There are also the Seaside Hill acts in Sonic Generations, and then the Rail Canyon acts that were added for Shadow's story, so I do think it has left a positive impact on the Sonic franchise. I do realize that the same thing could be said for Sonic 06 if I'm making these types of comparisons, but I do think Sonic Heroes is looked at more in a positive light for obvious reasons. A few other things that I'll say in defense for Sonic Heroes is that I think if it was truly a bad game that wasn't good at all, I think I would find more videos of people criticizing it online than I do now. I can guarantee that if I try to find videos of why Sonic 06 is a bad game, that I'll certainly find more videos of people with that stance than people that say that Sonic Heroes is a bad game. It's also worth noting that the game got pretty decent reviews back when it came out. Of course, I've seen plenty of times over the years that critics can love something that the fans feel the complete opposite about. However, in this case, if you have some fans that like the game and have reviewers give it a good outlook from back then, it can't be that bad when compared to Sonic 06, which both reviewers and fans both shared a similar stance. So thankfully, I feel like it is safe for me to conclude while Sonic Heroes doesn't appeal to everyone, it's not like Superman 64 that's a complete mess for anyone that plays it. But of course, those are my own thoughts and opinions on the matter. Without Sonic Heroes, I wouldn't have the impact that was left on me. A game that gave me a great experience despite its flaws, zooming from the start to the finish with really fun platforming elements, a memorable and enjoyable soundtrack, and memories that will remain with me for a very long time. I already mentioned that this was the introduction to the Sonic games for myself. After Sonic Heroes, I got the Sonic Advance games, Sonic Riders, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic 06. Alright, that's probably not the best example, but in other words, it introduced me to so many great games and a great franchise. I probably would only remember Sonic as that one shell with a hedgehog that would run incredibly fast that would appear every Saturday mornings many years ago. I will never plan to badmouth anyone for having their opinions or certain takes when it comes to any subject as a whole, but I will defend Sonic Heroes as the game, despite its flaws, that it left so many great memories for me and introduced me to a bunch of fantastic games that are still a joy to play to this day. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll consider watching some of my other videos that I've got on screen, and stick around because I plan to post even more content coming soon. Thank you again, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.